What if being close to your children doesn't necessarily contribute to their happiness? A thought that might leave American parents baffled. Imagine a graph, a simple line graph but with a complex message. This graph, shared by American psychologist Jean Twenge, plots two curves. One measures the satisfaction of American high school seniors with their relationship with their parents. The other, their satisfaction with life in general. For decades, from 1976 to 2012, these two curves moved in harmony, even converging in the early 2000s. But then, something peculiar happened. From 2012 onwards, the lines diverged, moving in opposite directions. An intriguing paradox emerged. As American teenagers became increasingly content with their relationships with their parents, their general life satisfaction took a nosedive. This might seem counterintuitive. After all, wouldn't a strong, healthy bond with parents naturally lead to a happier, more satisfied life? But the data paints a different, more complex story. The graph uncovers a paradox in parent-child relationships. It challenges the widely held belief that by being more involved, more attuned to our children, we can ensure their happiness. Instead, it suggests that as relationships with parents improve, teenagers might be becoming less happy overall. It's a reality that might hit parents hard. It's a slap in the face for those who have always believed that a close, harmonious relationship with their children would foster happiness and contentment. Yet the graph offers a different narrative, one that invites us to delve deeper into the intricate dynamics of parent-child relationships. The data behind this paradox comes from a study by the University of Michigan. Let's dive a bit deeper into this intriguing finding, shall we? Since 1976, researchers at the University of Michigan have been meticulously collecting data. Each year, they enrich this epidemiological study known as Monitoring the Future by administering questionnaires in schools. The data gathered is expansive and insightful, providing a detailed window into the lives of American teens over the decades. Now here's where things get worrisome. The data reveals a concerning rise in mental health issues among our young ones. We're not just talking about a minor increase, but a significant and alarming surge. Picture this. Teenage depression figures have doubled in just a decade, from 2011 to 2021. That's right, doubled. But the startling revelations don't stop there. When we look at the data pertaining to young girls, we find that the rate of those who have ever considered suicide is at its highest. In fact, 1 in 3 girls have contemplated this drastic step at some point in their lives. It's a chilling statistic, isn't it? So while American teenagers are reporting increasingly satisfying relationships with their parents, their overall life satisfaction is taking a nosedive. The data presents a stark contrast and highlights a pressing issue. It's clear that despite the improved parent-child relationships, there's a whole other side to the story that needs to be addressed. With teenage depression figures doubling between 2011 and 2021, and the rate of girls ever considering suicide at its highest, it's clear there's a pressing issue at hand. While it might be tempting to link the growing malaise among young people to increased parental pressure, the data suggests otherwise. To understand this, let's examine the curve that shows an improvement in the satisfaction with the parent-child relationship. This curve is significant because it seems to debunk the hypothesis that the growing distress among young people is linked to increased parental pressure. The data shows that despite the rising levels of dissatisfaction with life in general, American teenagers are increasingly content with their relationship with their parents. This suggests that the pressure hypothesis, the notion that an increase in parental pressure is causing a surge in youth distress, might not hold water. Instead, it seems to indicate that the dynamics at home are improving, not worsening. Research data collected since 1976 from the University of Michigan reveals that satisfaction with the parent-child relationship has been on an upward trend. American teenagers are happier with their parents now than they were in the past decades, a fact that directly contradicts the pressure hypothesis. But what does this all mean? Well, it implies that while the pressures of adolescence and the complexities of the modern world might be contributing to the general dissatisfaction with life among teenagers, the family environment is not the main culprit. Parents are not the villains in this story. So if it's not the pressure from parents that's causing this malaise, then what is it? That's a question for another discussion. But the data does give parents a bit of a respite. It shows that their efforts to improve relationships with their kids are not in vain. Despite the overall dissatisfaction with life at home, things seem to be getting increasingly better. How often do American teenagers argue with their parents? The data might surprise you. In a world where we often picture teenagers and parents in a constant battle of wills, the reality is quite contrary to this common perception. According to the data collected in 2018, less than a third of high school seniors reported having at least 5 arguments with their parents in the preceding 12 months. Now, let's put this into perspective by looking back to the 1980s. In 1986, nearly half of the high school students reported having at least 5 disagreements with their parents in a span of a year. That's a significant difference, isn't it? Over 3 decades, the frequency of arguments between parents and teenagers has notably decreased. This shift suggests a transformation in the dynamics of parent-child relationships. What could be the reason behind this change? Are parents and teenagers today more in tune with each other's perspectives? Or could it be that teenagers have become more adept at avoiding conflicts? Or perhaps parents have become more understanding, more patient, and more accepting of their children's individuality? The possibilities are numerous, and the exact reasons may vary from one family to another. Yet here's the paradox. While arguments between parents and teenagers are decreasing, overall life satisfaction among teenagers is not on the rise. In fact, it's plummeting. This is counterintuitive, isn't it? One would naturally assume that fewer arguments would lead to a happier life, but the data tells us a different story. So what does this mean? Are improved parent-teenager relationships not contributing significantly to the overall happiness of teenagers? Or are there other more influential factors at play impacting their life satisfaction? The answers to these questions are complex and multifaceted. Decreased argument frequency suggests a shift in parent-child dynamics, yet overall life satisfaction continues to plummet. As we delve deeper into this paradox, we're left with even more questions. The enigma of the parent-child relationship and its impact on a teenager's happiness continues. So, what does this all mean for American parents and their children? We've journeyed through a landscape of paradoxical data, tracing the lines of increasing satisfaction in parent-child relationships alongside a seemingly contradictory plummet in overall life satisfaction among American teenagers. This paradox, encapsulated in 2 intertwining curves, presents a conundrum that challenges our assumptions about the ingredients of adolescent happiness. Let's recap what we've unearthed. Despite the strengthening bonds between American parents and their children, there's an unsettling trend of declining life satisfaction among teenagers. This trend is not a mere blip on the radar, but a consistent pattern that has emerged over time, defying the intuitive notion that improved parent-child relationships should translate into happier teenagers. We also explored the hypothesis that this growing malaise among young people could be linked to increased parental pressure. However, the data suggests otherwise. The home environment, it seems, is becoming increasingly harmonious, with fewer arguments and more satisfaction in parent-child relationships. Yet, this positive shift within the family unit has not translated into an upswing in overall life satisfaction for teenagers. This leaves us with an unresolved paradox. If improving relationships with parents doesn't necessarily contribute to the happiness of our teenagers, then what does? What are we missing in this complex equation of adolescent well-being? The answer, it seems, requires further research, deeper understanding, and a broader perspective. Perhaps we need to reevaluate our assumptions, to look beyond the confines of the family unit, and consider a multitude of factors that could be influencing our teenagers' sense of satisfaction with life. The path to fostering happiness in our children may be more complex than we thought. As we continue to explore this paradox, one thing is clear. There's much more to learn about the intricacies of parent-child relationships and their impact on our children's happiness.